The 4 men dragged Private Desmond Doss behind the barracks at Fort Jackson and beat him until he coughed blood into the South Carolina dirt. They worked methodically, fists to the ribs, knees to the stomach, a boot to the kidney that made Doss gasp and curl into himself. One of them grabbed his hair and lifted his face from the ground. Doss could smell whiskey on the man's breath, could see the hatred in his eyes even in the darkness. "You are going to get us all killed, you coward." Another punch, this one to the jaw. Doss tasted copper, felt a tooth loosen. The man holding his hair slammed his face back into the dirt. "Quit the army tomorrow or we will kill you ourselves. Do you understand me?" Doss said nothing. Blood filled his mouth. He spat it out and tried to breathe through his nose. The men stood over him for another moment, then walked away, laughing quietly among themselves. Doss lay in the dirt for 10 minutes, maybe 15. Time moves strangely when you were trying to remember how to breathe. Finally, he pushed himself to his hands and knees. His ribs screamed. Something was broken or cracked. He could feel it grinding when he moved. He stood slowly, bracing himself against the barracks wall, took one step, then another, made it to the corner and vomited into the grass. Blood and dinner. When his stomach was empty, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and walked to the door. Inside, 40 men pretended to sleep. Doss limped to his bunk, lay down on top of the covers, and stared at the ceiling until morning. This was April 17th, 1942. Desmond Doss had been in the United States Army for exactly 9 days, and this was only the beginning. To understand why 4 American soldiers beat one of their own behind a barracks in South Carolina, you need to go back 2 days, to April 15th, to the moment Desmond Doss refused his rifle. 05:30 hours, the armory at Fort Jackson. Company B stood in formation, waiting to receive their weapons. 140 men, all of them volunteers, all of them ready to fight the Japanese after Pearl Harbor, all of them except one. Sergeant Howell called names from his clipboard. Each soldier stepped forward, stated his serial number, and received an M1 Garand rifle. The process was efficient. Howell had done this thousands of times since December 7th. Name, number, rifle, next man. America was building an army, and Howell was part of the assembly line. The line moved forward. Desmond Doss waited near the end, his hands sweating despite the cool morning. He knew what was coming, had been dreading it since he arrived at Fort Jackson, but there was no way around it. Eventually, his turn came. Doss, Desmond T. Doss stepped forward. Serial number 33158036, Sergeant. Howell reached for a rifle, held it out. Doss did not move to take it. Howell looked up from his clipboard. "Take your weapon, Private." "I cannot do that, Sergeant." The world stopped. 139 men had taken their rifles without question, without hesitation. You joined the army. The army gave you a rifle. You took the rifle. This was how it worked. This was how it had always worked. Howell stared at Doss like he had just sprouted a second head. "Excuse me. I will not carry a rifle, Sergeant. I am here to serve as a medic. I will not kill." The silence in that armory was total, absolute. Every man turned to stare. Howell's face went from white to red in the space of 3 seconds. "Private Doss, I gave you a direct order. Take your weapon." "I cannot, Sergeant. I am a Seventh-day Adventist. The 6th commandment says thou shalt not kill. I cannot break God's law." Someone in the formation laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire company was laughing at the skinny private from Virginia who thought he could join the army and refused to fight. Howell slammed the rifle down on the table. The crash echoed through the armory. "Step aside, Private. We will discuss this after formation." Doss moved to the side, stood at attention while the remaining soldiers collected their weapons. Every single one of them looked at him as they passed, some with contempt, some with disbelief, some with pure hatred. By the time the last rifle was issued, Desmond Doss had become the most hated man at Fort Jackson. The meeting with Captain Glover lasted 20 minutes. Glover sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, studying Doss like a curious insect. "Let me make sure I understand you, Private. You volunteered for military service. You passed your physical. You took the oath. You agreed to follow orders. And now you are telling me you will not carry a weapon." "That is correct, sir." "On what grounds?" "Religious grounds, sir. I am a Seventh-day Adventist. We observe the Sabbath on Saturday. We do not eat meat, and we do not kill. It is against God's commandment." Glover leaned back in his chair. Private Doss, I respect your faith. I truly do. But you cannot serve in the United States Army without carrying a weapon. It is not optional. It is not negotiable. Every soldier must be able to defend himself and his unit. Without a weapon, you are a liability. You will get men killed. I disagree, sir. I can serve as a medic. I can save lives instead of taking them. And what happens when a Japanese soldier is shooting at you, Private? How will you defend yourself? I will trust in God, sir. God will not stop a bullet, Private. Then I will die, sir. But I will die with a clear conscience. Glover studied Doss for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would haunt him for months. Fine, Private. You want to be a medic? I will make you a medic. But understand this. Every man in Company B now knows you refused your rifle. They think you are a coward. And frankly, Private, so do I. You will not last 2 weeks in this army. Yes, sir. Dismissed. Doss saluted and left. Behind him, he heard Lieutenant Manley say, "We need to get rid of that kid, sir. He is going to be a problem." Glover sighed. Probably. But we cannot discharge him for religious beliefs. Let the men handle it. He will quit on his own soon enough. The men did handle it. That night, Doss returned to the barracks after evening chow to find his bunk destroyed, mattress on the floor, footlocker open, contents scattered. Someone had written "coward" on his pillow in boot polish. His Bible was under a bunk on the other side of the room. 40 men watched him pick up his belongings. Nobody spoke. Nobody helped. When Doss bent to retrieve his Bible, someone kicked it further away. He crawled after it on his hands and knees while the barracks erupted in laughter. Doss remade his bunk in silence, folded his clothes, and placed them back in his footlocker, opened his Bible, and began to read. The laughter continued. Someone threw a boot at him. It hit his shoulder, but he did not react, just kept reading. Private Grogan, the biggest man in the company, walked over and stood above Doss's bunk. "You listening to me, preacher boy?" Doss looked up. "Yes." "Good, because I want you to understand something. You are going to get men killed over there. You are going to freeze up when the shooting starts, and someone is going to die because you would not fight. So let me be very clear. If you do not quit this army in the next 48 hours, we are going to make your life hell. We are going to make you wish you had never been born. Do you understand?" "I understand." "And you are still not going to quit?" "No." Grogan stared at him for 5 seconds. Then he hawked and spat on Doss's Bible. The saliva ran down the cover, soaking into the worn leather. Doss said nothing, just wiped it off with his sleeve and went back to reading. That night, someone pissed in his canteen while he slept. The next morning, someone stole his boots before the 6-mile run. Doss completed it in socks. His feet bled through the cotton by mile 2. By mile 4, he was leaving red footprints on the dirt road. He finished last, limping badly, his socks shredded and soaked with blood. Sergeant Howell wrote him up for being out of uniform and falling behind formation. That afternoon, someone put broken glass in his canteen. Doss discovered it during water break when he took a drink and felt shards cutting his gums. He spat blood and glass into his hand and said nothing, just rinsed his mouth and kept marching. That night, 4 men dragged him behind the barracks and beat him. The abuse continued for 6 weeks. They stole his uniform, and he did morning formation in his underwear. They destroyed his letters from Dorothy, his fiancée, tearing them into pieces and scattering them across the barracks floor. They put a dead rat in his footlocker. They tripped him during drills. They accidentally hit him during hand-to-hand combat training, always hard enough to hurt, never hard enough to leave permanent damage. The drill instructors looked the other way. Captain Glover looked the other way. Everyone looked the other way because everyone agreed that Private Desmond Doss needed to learn a lesson. He needed to understand that you cannot refuse to fight and expect to survive in the United States Army. But Doss did not quit. Every morning, he woke at 0500, made his bunk with perfect hospital corners, shined his boots until they gleamed, reported for formation on time, in proper uniform, ready to train. And every evening, he knelt beside his bunk and prayed while the other men mocked him. The mockery was worse than the beatings. During bayonet training, the instructor made Doss stand at the front of the formation while every other soldier practiced stabbing motions at dummy targets. Take a good look, gentlemen. This is Private Doss. He will not fight. He will not defend himself. He will stand there and let the enemy kill him. And when that happens, one of you will have to risk your life to save his worthless ass. Remember that. Remember it every time you look at him." The formation cheered. During hand-to-hand combat, Doss was paired against the biggest, most aggressive soldiers in the company. He was thrown, choked, punched, kicked, all in the name of training. The instructors watched and did nothing. After one session, Doss lay in the dirt coughing blood. Private Grogan stood over him. "You're going to die over there, Doss. And when you do, I am going to spit on your grave." But something strange happened in Week 7. Company B was running a field exercise in the Carolina swamps. Temperature was 95 degrees. Humidity was brutal. Men were dropping from heat exhaustion left and right. Doss was assigned to the medical detail, working under Corporal Lynch, the company medic. Private Mazzini collapsed during a simulated advance. He went down hard, his body convulsing. Heat stroke. Doss reached him before anyone else. Doss had been studying medical manuals every night since basic training started, had memorized symptoms and treatments, had prepared for this exact scenario. He knew heat stroke killed by raising core body temperature to fatal levels. He knew he had maybe 10 minutes to cool Mazzini down, or the man would suffer permanent brain damage. Doss ripped off Mazzini's helmet and uniform jacket, poured his entire canteen over Mazzini's head and chest, elevated his legs to keep blood flowing to the brain, checked pulse and respiration, started counting seconds in his head. Corporal Lynch arrived 40 seconds later with a stretcher team. By then, Mazzini was conscious and responding to questions. His eyes were focused. His breathing was steady. He was going to be fine. Lynch stared at Doss. "Where the hell did you learn that?" "Medical manuals, Corporal. I have been reading them every night." "You just saved this man's life, Doss. Another 2 minutes, and we would have lost him." The stretcher team carried Mazzini away. Lynch stayed behind. He looked at Doss differently now. Not with contempt, not with pity, with something else. Respect, maybe. "I was wrong about you, Private. I thought you were hiding behind religion because you were too scared to fight. But you just ran toward danger while everyone else was running away. That takes guts." Doss said nothing. "You are still going to die over there, you know. Without a weapon, you are a dead man walking. But maybe you will save a few lives before you go." The hatred in Company B did not disappear after Mazzini, but it changed. Some men still thought Doss was a coward, but others started to wonder, started to think maybe this quiet kid from Virginia had something they did not understand. The final test came in late June during the qualification exercise. 3 days in the swamps, simulated combat, live artillery fire landing miles away, the concussions meant to recreate battlefield conditions. It was as close to war as you could get without actual bullets. On the second night, Corporal Lynch twisted his ankle badly during a river crossing. Could not walk, could not put weight on it. The bone was not broken, but the ligaments were torn. He needed evacuation. Doss and Private Hernandez fashioned a stretcher from tree branches and ponchos. They carried Lynch 4 miles through swamp water in complete darkness. Doss took the heavy end, the end that bore most of Lynch's weight, and never once complained. When they reached the evacuation point, Lynch grabbed Doss's arm. His grip was strong. His eyes were intense. "Listen to me, Private. I have been a combat medic for 3 years. I have trained maybe 50 kids like you. Most wash out in the first week. You did not wash out. You did not quit when the whole company hated you. You did not quit when they beat you half to death. You did not quit when officers tried to discharge you. That tells me something important. It tells me that when the real bullets start flying, you are not going anywhere, and that makes you valuable. Do you understand what I am saying?" "I think so, Corporal." "No, you do not understand yet, but you will. War is not about killing, Doss. War is about keeping your brothers alive. You understand that better than anyone in this company, better than me. And that is going to save lives when we get over there." Company B graduated basic training on July 3, 1942. At the ceremony, Captain Glover called Doss forward in front of the entire formation. He pinned the medic insignia to Doss's collar. No rifle was issued. Desmond Doss was officially a combat medic. He would deploy to the Pacific Theater as a non-combatant. Glover shook his hand, leaned close, and spoke quietly. "I still think you are going to die over there, Private, but I was wrong to call you a coward. A coward runs from hard things. You run toward them. I do not understand you, but I respect you." "Thank you, sir." "Do not thank me. Just bring my men home." That night, Doss sat on his bunk and wrote a letter to Dorothy told her about graduation, about his deployment orders, about how much he missed her. He did not tell her about the beatings, did not tell her that his own men might shoot him in the back during combat. She did not need to know. He sealed the letter, placed it in the outgoing mailbag. Then he opened his Bible and found his favorite verse, Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." He read it 3 times. Then he closed the Bible, lay down, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, they would board trains for California, then ships for Hawaii, then wherever the Army decided American soldiers needed to kill Japanese soldiers. And Desmond Doss, who refused to kill anyone, would be right there with them, armed with nothing but bandages, morphine, and absolute faith that God would protect him when the bullets started flying. Because Desmond Doss understood something his drill sergeants did not, something Captain Glover did not, something even his fellow soldiers did not. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what is right, even when you are terrified, even when everyone hates you, even when doing the right thing might get you killed. And in 2 years, on a blood-soaked ridge in Okinawa, Desmond Doss would prove that an unarmed man could be braver than an entire battalion of riflemen. But first, he had to survive the journey to war. Chapter 2, December 1944. Lady the day Doss almost broke December 10th, 1944, 13:47 hours, somewhere in the jungle hills of Leyte, Philippines. Private Desmond Doss knelt in the mud beside Private First Class Robert Harker and watched him die. Harker was 19 years old, farm kid from Iowa. He had shown Doss pictures of his girlfriend 3 days ago. Her name was Susan. They were going to get married when the war ended. Harker talked about the farm he would buy, about the children they would have, about growing corn and raising cattle and living a quiet life far away from jungles and bullets and blood. Now Harker was dying in the mud with a hole in his chest the size of a fist. Doss had both hands pressed into the wound trying to stop the bleeding, but there was too much blood. It poured between his fingers, hot and thick, soaking into the jungle floor. Harker's eyes were open. He was trying to say something, but blood filled his mouth, and the words came out as wet gurgles. "Stay with me, Harker. Stay with me. The corpsmen are coming. Just stay with me." But the corpsmen were not coming. They were pinned down 200 yards away by the same Japanese machine gun that had cut Harker nearly in half. Nobody was coming. It was just Doss and Harker and the sound of gunfire and the smell of blood and cordite. Harker's eyes lost focus. His chest stopped moving. Doss felt the moment life left him, felt it like a physical thing, like something important had just vanished from the world. Doss pulled his hands away. They were covered in blood up to the wrists. He stared at them for 5 seconds, 10. Then he heard someone screaming for a medic, and he made himself stand up and move toward the sound. He did not think about Harker, could not think about Harker. If he started thinking about the dead, he would never stop. This was how the day had started. Company B had been advancing through the jungle since 0600 hours. Intelligence said Japanese resistance was collapsing. Intelligence said the regiment they were chasing was down to half strength and retreating toward the coast. Intelligence said casualties would be light. Intelligence had never been to Leyte. The jungle was impossible. Vines thick as your arm. Trees so dense the canopy blocked the sun. Mud that sucked at your boots with every step. Heat that made your uniform stick to your skin. Humidity so thick you could taste it. And rain. Constant rain that turned everything into a swamp. They had been slogging through it for 7 hours when the ambush hit. The Japanese had let the first 2 squads pass, let them walk right through the kill zone. Then they opened up from 3 sides with machine guns and mortars and rifle fire. It was textbook. It was perfect. And it was a slaughter. 15 men went down in the first 30 seconds, screaming, bleeding, dying. The rest of Company B hit the deck and returned fire, but they were shooting at ghosts. The Japanese were dug in, hidden, invisible. Their muzzle flashes were the only indication they existed at all. Doss had been near the rear of the column when it happened. He heard the first burst of machine gun fire and started moving forward immediately. Private Chen, the other company medic, grabbed his arm. "Doss, we wait for covering fire. We go out there now. We are dead. Men are dying now." Doss pulled free and started crawling toward the screaming. The first man he reached was Sergeant Williams. Williams had taken a round through the shoulder that had shattered his collarbone and torn through his scapula. The bone was visible through the torn flesh, white and jagged. Williams was conscious but going into shock. His skin was pale. His breathing was rapid and shallow. His pupils were dilated. Doss tore open a packet of sulfa powder and dumped it into the wound. Williams screamed. The powder burned like fire when it contacted exposed tissue. Doss ignored the screaming and started wrapping pressure bandages. He used 4. The blood soaked through all of them immediately. He needed to get Williams to the aid station, but the aid station was 300 yards away, through a jungle full of Japanese soldiers who were actively trying to kill everyone in Company B. So Doss did the only thing he could do. He dragged Williams behind a fallen tree, propped him against the trunk, and moved to the next man. Private Morrison had taken shrapnel from a mortar. His right leg was torn open from knee to hip. Doss could see the femur, could see where fragments had chipped the bone. Morrison was screaming for his mother, was thrashing, was going to bleed out in less than 3 minutes if Doss could not stop it. Doss pulled a tourniquet from his medical bag, wrapped it high on Morrison's thigh, tightened it until the bleeding slowed to a trickle. Morrison passed out from the pain. That was fine. Better he was unconscious. Conscious men asked questions Doss could not answer. He moved to the next man, and the next, and the next. Corporal Davis, gunshot wound to the abdomen, intestines visible through the torn uniform. Doss packed the wound with gauze and morphine and prayer. Private Hernandez, both legs shattered by a mortar round, bones sticking through the skin at odd angles. Doss splinted them with tree branches and torn uniform. Private First Class Jackson, face torn open by shrapnel, left eye gone, right eye blinking in confusion. Doss wrapped bandages around Jackson's head until he looked like a mummy and told him he was going to be fine, even though Doss knew he was probably lying. The Japanese kept shooting. Bullets snapped through the jungle. Mortars dropped every few minutes, the explosions throwing mud and shrapnel in all directions. Men kept screaming for medics, kept bleeding, kept dying. Doss worked through all of it. He ran out of morphine after the 8th man, started using it sparingly after that, a quarter syringe instead of a full dose, just enough to take the edge off the pain, not enough to really help. The wounded men screamed louder, but Doss had no choice. He had 15 more casualties and only 6 syringes left. He ran out of bandages after the 12th man, started tearing his uniform into strips, used those until they were gone, then started tearing the uniforms off dead men. That felt wrong, felt like desecration, but the living needed bandages more than the dead needed dignity. He ran out of sulfa powder after the 15th man, just tapped the container and nothing came out. He stared at it for 3 seconds, then threw it away and kept moving. By 1500 hours, Doss had been working for 3 hours straight. His medical bag was empty. His uniform was soaked with blood and mud. His hands were shaking from exhaustion, but men were still screaming, still bleeding, still dying. That was when he found Harker. Harker was conscious when Doss reached him. His eyes were clear. He knew he was dying. Doss could see it in his face, could see the knowledge there, the acceptance. Am I going to make it, Doss? Doss looked at the wound, looked at Harker's face, made a choice. Yeah, you are going to make it. Just stay with me. It was a lie. Harker had maybe 5 minutes, but sometimes a lie was kinder than the truth. Doss pressed his hands into the wound and tried to stop the bleeding, tried to will Harker's blood to stay inside his body where it belonged, but human will was not stronger than physics. Blood kept flowing, kept pouring out between Doss's fingers, hot and thick and unstoppable. Harker tried to speak. Blood came out instead of words. His eyes found Doss's face, held there, then went empty. Doss pulled his hands away, stared at them, at the blood, at the uselessness of everything he had done. For the first time since basic training, Desmond Doss wanted to quit, not because he was scared, not because he was tired, but because no matter how hard he worked, men kept dying. No matter how fast he moved, he could not reach them all. No matter how much he tried, it was never enough. Harker was the 6th man to die in his hands. The 6th man Doss had been unable to save. And standing there in the jungle with blood up to his elbows, Doss felt something break inside him, felt faith crack like glass under pressure. He heard someone screaming for a medic, did not move, heard it again, still did not move. Just stood there staring at his hands and wondering what the point was. wondering why God would give him the desire to save lives, but not the ability to save them all. Then Private Grogan appeared beside him. Grogan, who had beaten him at Fort Jackson, who had spat on his Bible, who had promised to spit on his grave. Grogan grabbed Doss by the shoulders and turned him around. His face was inches away. His eyes were intense. "Doss, I know what you are thinking. I can see it in your face. You are thinking about quitting, about giving up. Do not do it. Do not you dare do it. I could not save him. No, you could not. But you saved Williams. You saved Morrison. You saved Davis and Hernandez and Jackson and a dozen other men who would be dead right now if you were not here. So you do not get to quit. Not today. Not ever. You understand me?" Doss said nothing. "Those men out there need you, Doss. They need you more than they need me or my rifle or any damn thing else in this jungle. So you are going to pick up your bag and you are going to go save them, because that is what you do. That is who you are." Somewhere close by, someone was screaming, a long, agonized wail that cut through the gunfire and the rain and everything else. Doss looked at Grogan, then he looked at his hands, at the blood, at the evidence of his failure, and he made a choice. He picked up his medical bag, started walking toward the screaming, one foot in front of the other, moving because moving was better than standing still, because even if he could not save everyone, he could save someone, and someone was better than no one. The battle lasted until nightfall, 6 more hours of gunfire and explosions and men screaming for medics. Doss worked through all of it, moved from casualty to casualty, used strips of his own skin as bandages when he ran out of everything else, gave his own morphine syrettes away to men in worse pain than he was, kept working even when his legs gave out and he had to crawl. By the time Company B finally broke through the Japanese position and secured the area, Doss had treated 32 casualties, 32 men who would have died without his immediate intervention, but 6 men had died anyway. 6 men he could not save. 6 names he would carry for the rest of his life. That night, after the wounded had been evacuated and the dead had been collected and Company B had dug in for the inevitable counterattack, Captain Glover found Doss sitting alone at the edge of the perimeter. Doss was staring at nothing. His hands were still covered in dried blood. He had not tried to clean them. Glover sat down beside him, did not speak for a long moment, just sat there in the darkness, listening to distant artillery and the sound of rain on leaves. Finally, Glover said, "I watched you today, watched you work. I have been in this army for 12 years, fought in 3 campaigns, seen a lot of men do a lot of brave things. What you did today was the bravest thing I have ever seen." Doss said nothing. "You saved 32 men, Doss. 32. Without a weapon, without armor. You just ran out there and saved them because that is what you do. Do you understand how incredible that is? 6 men died. Yes, 6 men died, and that is not your fault. You did everything humanly possible. You worked for 9 hours straight. You emptied your bag. You used your own uniform as bandages. You gave everything you had. No man could have done more." Doss looked at Glover. His eyes were red. His voice was quiet. "It was not enough. It never is, Doss. It never is. But you saved 32 lives today. 32 men who will go home to their families because you refused to quit. That has to mean something." Doss turned back to staring at nothing. Glover waited another moment, then stood to leave. Before he walked away, he said one more thing. "We are going to Okinawa in 3 months. Intelligence says it is going to be worse than this, worse than anything we have seen. And when we get there, I am going to need you. All these men are going to need you. So whatever you are feeling right now, whatever doubts you are having, you work through them, because we cannot do this without you. Do you understand?" Doss nodded, did not speak, just nodded. Glover walked away. Doss sat alone in the darkness for another hour. Then he stood, walked to a stream, and washed the blood off his hands. The water ran red. The blood mixed with the rain and disappeared into the jungle. When his hands were clean, Doss knelt beside the stream and prayed. He prayed for the 32 men he had saved. He prayed for the 6 men who had died. He prayed for strength to keep going when every part of him wanted to stop. And he prayed that God would help him understand why some men lived and some men died, and why he was given the terrible burden of deciding which was which. He did not receive an answer. God was silent. The jungle was silent. The only sound was rain and distant gunfire. But when Doss stood up and walked back to his foxhole, something had changed. He had made a decision. He would keep working, would keep saving lives, would keep running toward the screaming, even when every rational part of his brain told him to run away. Because Grogan was right. That was who he was. That was what he did. And in 4 months, on a cliff called Hacksaw Ridge, that decision would be tested in ways Doss could not imagine, would push him beyond any limit of human endurance, would force him to save more lives in one night than most medics saved in an entire war. But tonight, Desmond Doss was just a man sitting in a foxhole in the rain, trying to forget the feeling of Robert Harker's blood between his fingers and failing. April 29th, 1945, 0547 hours. Base of Maida Escarpment, Okinawa. Private Desmond Doss stood at the bottom of a 400-foot cliff and watched 200 men prepare to climb it into hell. The cliff was not really a cliff. Military maps called it Maida Escarpment. The men called it Hacksaw Ridge because the top looked like the serrated edge of a saw blade. Jagged, irregular, designed by nature to be unclimbable and fortified by the Japanese to be unbreakable. Doss tilted his head back and looked up. The cliff face disappeared into morning mist. Somewhere up there, hidden in the fog and coral rock, Japanese soldiers were waiting. They had been waiting for weeks, digging tunnels, building bunkers, positioning machine guns to cover every approach, turning the top of that ridge into a fortress that would cost American lives by the hundreds. Captain Glover walked along the line, checking gear. When he reached Doss, he stopped. His face was grim. "You ready for this, Doss?" "No, sir, but I will do my job." "That is all any of us can do." Doss adjusted his medical bag. 20 syrettes of morphine, 40 packets of sulfa powder, 60 bandages, 3 tourniquets. It would not be enough. It was never enough. Private Grogan appeared beside him, loaded with rifle and grenades. He looked at Doss's medical bag. "You know you are insane, right? Going up there without a weapon?" "I have a weapon." Doss held up a bandage. "This saves lives. That is better than taking them." Grogan almost smiled. "You are a strange man, Doss, but I am glad you are here." The assault began at 0600 hours. Engineers had erected cargo nets up the cliff face. The nets stretched 400 feet straight up, swaying in the morning breeze. From the bottom, they looked impossibly fragile, like spider webs that would tear apart in the moment weight was applied. Lieutenant Manley blew his whistle. The first wave started climbing. Doss watched men scale the nets hand over hand. They climbed slowly, testing each handhold. The nets creaked and swayed. Nobody spoke about what was waiting at the top. The Japanese let the first wave reach halfway before opening fire. Machine guns erupted from hidden positions. Tracers arced down through the mist like burning meteors. Type 92 heavy machine guns, 7.7 millimeter rounds at 600 rounds per minute. Men started falling. Private Kowalski took rounds in the back and chest simultaneously. The bullets punched through his torso and exploded out the front in sprays of red. His hands released the net. His body hung suspended for 1 second, then dropped. He fell 400 feet and hit the ground 20 yards from Doss. The sound was wet, final. More men fell, some dead before they hit, others screaming all the way down. The cargo nets became slippery with blood, but the assault continued. The only way forward was up. Staying on the nets meant death. Doss started climbing. His medical bag weighed 30 pounds, threw off his balance, made every handhold precarious. He climbed one-handed, right hand on the net, left hand on the bag. Above him, men were screaming. Blood rained down from casualties higher up. At 100 feet, a bullet passed so close to his head, he felt the pressure wave. At 200 feet, the man above him took a round through the throat and went limp. His body sagged against the net, blocking the way. Doss had to climb around the corpse, reaching past dead fingers to find new handholds. At 300 feet, a mortar exploded 30 feet to his right. The concussion hit like a fist. Men were torn from the nets. Bodies tumbled past, spinning, trailing blood. One grabbed at Doss's leg as he fell. Doss felt fingers close around his ankle, felt the weight pulling him down. Then the fingers slipped, and the man was gone. Doss's hands were shaking. His breath came in gasps. He made the mistake of looking down. The ground was impossibly far below. Vertigo washed over him. His grip loosened. For one terrible second, he felt himself starting to fall. He closed his eyes, whispered a prayer. "Lord, I am terrified. My hands are shaking. I do not think I can do this, but these men need me. Please, help me reach the top." He opened his eyes, kept climbing. The last 50 feet were the worst. The Japanese concentrated fire there. Machine guns, rifles, grenades rolled over the edge to explode against the cliff face. The man ahead of Doss took a bullet through the head. The back of his skull exploded. Brain matter sprayed across the rock. The body hung there, tangled in the net, eyes open. Doss climbed past without looking at the face. If he started looking at faces, he would never stop seeing them. At 6:47 hours, Desmond Doss pulled himself over the top of Hacksaw Ridge. The world exploded. Machine gun fire from 3 directions, mortar rounds walking across the ridge, Japanese soldiers firing from bunkers and spider holes. The noise was overwhelming, like being inside a thunderstorm made of metal. Doss rolled into a shell crater. 5 other men were already there, pressed against the far wall while bullets snapped overhead. Company B was dying. Maybe half the men who started the climb had reached the top. The rest were dead on the nets or dying somewhere below, and the men who made it up were pinned in craters with nowhere to go. Lieutenant Manley tried to organize an assault. He stood to give orders and took a bullet through the face. He dropped back into the crater, still alive, but his jaw was gone. Just gone. Teeth and bones scattered across the coral rock. He tried to speak. Pink bubbles formed where his mouth used to be. Doss moved to him immediately, pulled bandages, but there was nothing to bandage. The wound was too extensive. Manley needed a surgeon, needed a hospital, needed a miracle. What he had was Doss and morphine and minutes to live. Doss injected a full syringe into Manley's thigh, held pressure on what remained of his face. Manley's eyes found Doss's eyes, asking a question. Doss shook his head slowly. Manley understood. His eyes closed. Someone screamed for a medic. Then someone else. Then a dozen voices at once. Doss left Manley and started moving. 20 yards away, in another crater, Private Chen was screaming. Doss crawled across open ground while machine gun fire kicked up coral dust around him. Bullets snapped past his head. A mortar exploded close enough that the concussion lifted him off the ground and slammed him back down. He kept crawling. He reached Chen's crater and dropped in. Chen had stepped on a mine. Both legs were gone below the knees, not cleanly severed, torn, ragged. Bone jutted through flesh at angles that made Doss's stomach turn. Blood was pooling beneath Chen, soaking into the coral rock, spreading in a dark red circle that grew larger every second. Chen was staring at what remained of his legs, staring and screaming and screaming. Doss grabbed Chen's face, made him look away from the legs, made him focus. "Look at me, Chen. Look at me. You are going home. You hear me? You are going home to San Francisco. You are going to see your family again. But I need you to stop screaming and let me work." Chen's screams turned to whimpers. Doss pulled tourniquets from his bag. His hands were shaking. He had applied hundreds of tourniquets, but never to wounds this catastrophic. Never to a man who had lost both legs. He wrapped the first tourniquet high on Chen's right thigh, tightened it until the fabric cut into flesh, tightened more. The bleeding slowed, but did not stop. He wrapped the second tourniquet on the left leg, pulled it tight. Chen screamed again. Passed out. That was better. Unconscious men did not thrash. Doss injected morphine, dumped sulfa powder into the wounds, even though he knew it was probably useless. Started wrapping bandages around the stumps. The white fabric turned red immediately. He used 4 bandages on each leg, 8 total. Nearly a quarter of his supply gone on one man. Chen was going to die. Doss knew it. The blood loss was too severe, the wounds too extensive. Even if they got him off this ridge in the next 10 minutes, even if a surgeon was waiting at the bottom, Chen's chances were maybe 20%. But 20% was better than 0. Doss covered Chen with a poncho to keep him warm. Shock would kill him before blood loss if his core temperature dropped. Then Doss moved to the next man. For the next 4 hours, Desmond Doss moved from crater to crater under continuous fire. He treated wounds, gave morphine, applied tourniquets, made impossible decisions about who to help first. Sergeant Williams took shrapnel from a mortar. Doss packed the wounds. Private Morrison lost his hand to a grenade. Doss applied a tourniquet and watched Morrison stare at the stump in disbelief. Corporal Davis was shot through both legs. Doss splinted them with broken rifle stocks. He ran out of morphine by 9:30 hours, started giving half doses, quarter doses, told men to bite down on leather while he worked on them without anesthetic. He ran out of bandages by 1100, started tearing uniforms into strips. When he ran out of American uniforms, he used Japanese ones from the dead soldiers scattered across the ridge. At 11:30 hours, Doss sat in a shell crater and realized he could not remember the last time he had taken a full breath. His chest was tight. His hands would not stop shaking. He had treated maybe 20 men, lost count of how many died while he was saving someone else. He closed his eyes, just for 10 seconds. 10 seconds of not moving, not working, not deciding who lived and who died. He thought about climbing down, about running, about saving himself. The thought came unbidden and shameful, but it was there. He was so tired, so empty. What difference did one more medic make when the entire ridge was dying? Then he heard someone screaming, a long, agonized wail that cut through the gunfire. Doss opened his eyes, started moving toward the sound. One more, just one more. Then maybe he could rest. At 13:45 hours, Captain Glover found Doss treating a soldier with a sucking chest wound. Glover's uniform was torn. Blood streaked his face. He looked 20 years older than he had at the bottom of the cliff. "Doss, we are pulling back. We cannot hold this position." Doss looked up from his work. "What about the wounded, sir?" "We evacuate everyone we can carry. The rest stay." "Sir, I have 70 men up here who cannot move. If we leave them, the Japanese will execute them. If we stay, we all die. Those are the options, Private. Get the mobile wounded ready to move. That is an order." Doss stood, faced Glover directly. "I cannot do that, sir." "Excuse me. I cannot leave wounded men to be executed. It is not right." Glover's jaw tightened. "Private Doss, I am giving you a direct order. Get the mobile wounded and prepare to withdraw." "No, sir. No." "Court-martial me when I get back, sir. But I am staying." They stared at each other for 5 seconds. 10. Around them, men were dying. Japanese voices were growing closer. Time was running out. Finally, Glover said, "You are the most stubborn son of a bitch I have ever met, Doss." "Yes, sir." "And the bravest. Get as many down as you can. We will hold the bottom of the nets as long as possible." Glover turned and moved toward the next position, calling for withdrawal. Within minutes, Company B was descending the cargo nets under fire, leaving their dead behind, leaving many of their wounded behind, leaving Desmond Doss behind. By 14:30 hours, the last American soldier had reached the bottom of Hacksaw Ridge, except one. Doss pressed himself into a shell crater and listened to Japanese voices growing closer. They were moving across the plateau now, securing their victory. He heard gunshots, heard screams cut short. They were executing the American wounded they found. Doss counted 75 men still alive on top of the ridge, 75 men who would die if he did nothing. He could climb down, could save himself. Nobody would blame him. Or he could stay, could try to get them down one by one. It was impossible. It was suicide. Doss crawled out of the crater and started looking for wounded. He found Private Morrison first, both legs shattered. Doss dragged him to the edge of the cliff where the cargo nets hung. Then he did something that should not have worked. He fashioned a rope harness from Morrison's own belt and suspenders, looped it under Morrison's arms, tied the other end to the cargo net. Then he lowered Morrison over the edge, hand over hand, using the rope and the net as a primitive pulley system. Morrison descended 20 feet, 40, 60. Doss's hands burned. The rope cut into his palms. He ignored the pain and kept lowering. When Morrison reached the bottom, Doss pulled the rope back up and went looking for the next man. As the sun set over Hacksaw Ridge, Desmond Doss began the most impossible night of his life. 75 men, 400 feet, one unarmed medic. Somewhere in the darkness, Japanese patrols were hunting for survivors. Doss did not think about that. He just thought about the next man. Just one more. "Lord," he prayed as he lowered the second man down, "help me get one more down, just one more." The night had just begun. April 29th, 1945. 1945 hours. Top of Hacksaw Ridge, Okinawa. Desmond Doss crouched in the darkness beside the third wounded man and tried to decide if the sound he heard was wind or Japanese soldiers. The sound came again. Footsteps. Definitely footsteps. Coral rock crunching under boots. Moving closer. Maybe 30 yards away. Maybe 20. Doss pressed himself flat against the ground. The wounded soldier beside him, Private Kellerman, started to moan. The morphine was wearing off. Pain was pulling him toward consciousness. If Kellerman woke up fully, if he screamed, the Japanese would find them both. Doss clamped his hand over Kellerman's mouth, leaned close and whispered directly into his ear, "Do not make a sound. Do not move. If you move, we both die." Kellerman's eyes opened, glazed with pain and confusion, but he understood. He nodded slightly. Doss kept his hand in place. The footsteps came closer. 15 yards. 10. Doss could see the silhouette now. A Japanese soldier moving between shell craters, bayonet fixed, checking bodies. The soldier would stop at each crater, look inside, sometimes thrust his bayonet down into the darkness. Doss heard wet sounds, heard men die without the chance to scream. The soldier was 5 yards away now. 4. 3. He stopped at the crater where Doss and Kellerman were hiding, stood at the edge, looking down. His rifle pointed into the darkness. Doss could see his face in the moonlight. Young, maybe 20. Eyes moving across the crater, searching for movement. Doss did not breathe, did not blink. His hand stayed clamped over Kellerman's mouth. Beneath his palm, he could feel Kellerman's jaw working, feel him trying not to scream from the pain in his shattered legs. The Japanese soldier raised his rifle, pointed it down into the crater. His finger moved to the trigger. Then he saw the red cross on Doss's helmet. For 3 seconds, the soldier stared at the red cross. Then his eyes found Doss's face, found Kellerman's face, saw the bandages, saw the medical supplies scattered around them. The soldier lowered his rifle slowly. He looked at Doss for 1 more second. Their eyes met in the darkness. Then the soldier turned and walked away. His footsteps faded into the night. Doss waited a full minute before moving. His heart was hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. His hands were shaking worse than they had all day. He removed his hand from Kellerman's mouth. Kellerman whispered, "Why did he not shoot us?" "I do not know. He saw us. He looked right at us." "I know." Doss had no answer. He just pulled the rope harness from his bag and started securing it around Kellerman's chest. His hands fumbled with the knots. The adrenaline was making him clumsy. He dragged Kellerman to the edge of the cliff, tied the rope to the cargo net, started lowering him down into the darkness. Hand over hand, the rope burned his palms. His shoulders screamed, but he kept lowering, kept working. When the rope went slack, Doss knew Kellerman had reached the bottom. He pulled the rope back up. His palms were raw, bleeding. He ignored it and went looking for the next man. This was the system. Find a wounded soldier, drag him to the cliff edge, lower him down 400 feet of cargo net in complete darkness, pull the rope back up, find the next man, repeat. It should not have worked. The physics were wrong. Doss weighed 135 pounds. Most of the wounded men weighed more. The rope should have pulled him over the edge, but it did not. Doss lowered man after man, used his body weight as a counterbalance, braced his feet against rocks, wrapped the rope around his waist to take some of the load. His hands bled. The rope cut through his palms. He ignored the pain and kept working. The fourth man was Corporal Davis, both legs broken, unconscious. Doss secured the harness and started lowering. Halfway down, the rope snagged on something. Doss pulled. It would not budge. The rope was caught on a jagged piece of coral jutting from the cliff face. Doss had 2 choices: cut the rope and let Davis fall, or climb down 50 feet in the darkness and free it. He started climbing down. The cargo net swayed under his weight. Below him, 400 feet of nothing. Above him, Japanese soldiers patrolling the ridge. His hands were slippery with blood. Every handhold was agony, but he climbed down 20 feet, 30, 40. He reached the snag. The rope had wrapped around a coral outcropping and twisted. Doss worked it free with one hand while holding the net with the other. His arm shook from the strain. His fingers slipped. For one terrible second, he thought he was going to fall. He got the rope free, started climbing back up. His vision was going gray at the edges. His muscles felt like they were tearing. But he reached the top, pulled himself over the edge, and kept lowering Davis. When Davis reached the bottom, Doss collapsed, just for a moment, just long enough to catch his breath. His chest heaved. His hands were leaving blood on everything he touched. He stood up, went looking for the next man. Private Morrison, Sergeant Williams, Private Chen, who had lost both legs. One after another, Doss found them in craters and trenches and behind rocks. Some were conscious, some were not. Some begged him to leave them because they knew they were slowing him down. He ignored them and dragged them to the edge. At 100 hours, Doss had lowered 20 men. His hands no longer looked like hands. The skin was gone from his palms. He could see muscle and tendon when he flexed his fingers. Every time he gripped the rope, pain shot up his arms like electricity. He kept working. At 30 hours, he found Private Grogan. Grogan was in a crater on the far side of the ridge. Doss almost missed him, almost walked past, but he heard breathing, ragged and wet, the sound of lungs filling with blood. Doss dropped into the crater. Grogan was propped against the wall, his rifle across his lap. He had been shot in the chest. The wound was bad, maybe fatal. Blood bubbled from his mouth with each breath. Grogan's eyes focused on Doss's face. He tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. Doss, knew you would come. Save your strength. I am getting you down. Too late. Lung is filling up. I can feel it. Doss pulled bandages from his bag, started packing the wound even though he knew it was probably useless. The bullet had gone through Grogan's right lung. There was nothing Doss could do except make him comfortable. Listen to me, Grogan said. His voice was weak, getting weaker. At Fort Jackson, what I did to you, beating you, spitting on your Bible, I am sorry. You already apologized. At Lady, remember? Not enough. Need to say it proper. You are the best man I ever met, Doss. The bravest. You came back for all of us. No weapon, just came back. Grogan coughed. Blood sprayed from his mouth. His breathing became more labored. Each breath was a struggle. Doss injected morphine even though he had been saving it for men with better chances. Grogan's eyes started to glaze. The morphine was taking effect. Doss, one more thing. What? When you get down, tell my mother I died brave. Tell her I died fighting. Can you do that? You are not going to die. I am getting you down right now. Doss secured the harness around Grogan's chest. Grogan was 220 pounds of muscle and gear. The heaviest man Doss had lowered yet. It took everything Doss had to drag him to the cliff edge. He started lowering. The rope cut deeper into his ruined hands. His shoulders felt like they were separating from his body. He lowered 10 feet, 20, 50, 100. At 200 feet, his grip slipped. The rope burned through his hands. Grogan dropped 10 feet before Doss caught it again. The jolt nearly pulled Doss over the edge. He wrapped the rope around his waist, braced his feet against a rock, felt the rope cutting through his uniform into his skin. He lowered another 100 feet, another 50. The rope went slack. Grogan had reached the bottom. Doss pulled the rope up. His hands were no longer bleeding because there was no skin left to bleed, just raw tissue and exposed nerve. He could not make a fist, could not bend his fingers properly. He had lowered 37 men, had maybe 40 more to go, and his body was failing. At 0345 hours, Doss lowered the 42nd man, Private Jackson, face wrapped in bandages where shrapnel had taken his eye. When Jackson reached the bottom and the rope went slack, Doss tried to pull it back up. His hands would not close. He stared at them in the darkness, tried to make a fist. His fingers did not respond, not because they hurt beyond description, but because they would not obey his brain anymore. The muscles and tendons were too damaged. They had stopped working. Doss looked at the rope hanging over the edge, at his hands that would not grip, at the ridge where maybe 30 wounded men were still waiting, still trusting that he would come for them. He wanted to scream, wanted to quit, wanted to climb down and tell Captain Glover he had done everything he could, and it was not enough. He looked at his hands again, flexed them. Nothing happened. The fingers barely moved. Fine. If his hands would not work, he would find another way. Doss wrapped the rope around his right forearm, looped it twice, wrapped it around his left forearm, hooked his elbows through the loops. The rope bit into his arms, but his arms still worked even if his hands did not. He went looking for the next man. Private Henderson, shot through the abdomen. Doss dragged him to the edge using his arms and shoulders, secured the harness, started lowering using his forearms wrapped in rope. It was slower this way, more awkward. The rope cut into his arms until he could feel blood running down to his elbows. But it worked. Henderson descended, reached the bottom. Doss pulled the rope back up using his arms, found the next man. At 0445 hours, 50 men lowered. At 0530, 60. The sky was starting to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. The Japanese would see him soon. Doss moved faster, found men, dragged them, lowered them. His forearms were shredded, his shoulders were dislocated or close to it. His back felt like it was breaking, but he kept moving. At 0555 hours, he found the last man, Private Yamamoto, a Japanese-American soldier from California, both legs broken, unconscious. Doss secured the harness, started the final lower. Yamamoto descended 300 feet, 200, 100. The rope went slack. Doss stood at the edge of the cliff and looked across the ridge. The bodies of men he could not save lay scattered in craters and trenches. The Japanese positions were starting to stir with morning activity. The sun was rising. He had stayed too long. Doss coiled the rope using his elbows and forearms, put it in his bag. Then he started down the cargo net. His hands would not close on the rope. He hooked his wrists through the net, hung his weight on his forearms, climbed down like a man with no hands. 20 feet, 50, 100. At 300 feet, a Japanese soldier appeared at the top of the cliff, saw Doss hanging on the net, raised his rifle, aimed. Doss looked up, made eye contact with the soldier, the same young soldier from the crater, the one who had seen the Red Cross and walked away. Their eyes met across 300 feet. The soldier lowered his rifle, turned away, walked back from the edge. Doss did not understand, did not try to understand, just kept climbing down. 200 feet, 100, 50. He dropped the last 10 feet and collapsed at the base of the cliff. Hands grabbed him. Medics. Captain Glover was there. Grogan was there on a stretcher, alive, breathing, crying. Men were cheering. Someone was trying to look at Doss's hands, but he could not focus. Glover knelt beside him. His face was streaked with tears. "How many, Doss? How many did you get down?" Doss tried to count, lost track. Tried again. His mind was not working right. 75, sir. I think 75. Maybe more. I lost count. Glover grabbed Doss's face, made him focus. You saved 75 men, by yourself, in one night. Do you understand what you did? Doss shook his head. He did not understand. He just knew men had needed help, and he had helped them. You are a hero, Doss, the bravest man I have ever known. Doss wanted to respond, but the darkness was closing in. His body had used everything it had. There was nothing left. He closed his eyes and let unconsciousness take him. The last thing he heard was men cheering his name. May 2nd, 1945. 0320 hours. Field Hospital, Okinawa. Desmond Doss woke up screaming. The dream was always the same. He was back on the ridge lowering men down the cliff. But this time the rope broke. This time they fell. All 75 of them falling and screaming his name, and he could not save them. A nurse appeared beside his bed. You are safe, Private. The battle is over. But the battle was not over, not in Doss's head. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back on that ridge with Japanese soldiers hunting him in the darkness. How long have I been here? 3 days. You were unconscious for 2. Infection from your hands. Fever of 104. The doctors were not sure you would make it. Doss looked at his hands, wrapped in thick bandages from fingertips to elbows. He tried to move his fingers. Pain exploded up his arms. They barely responded. Will they heal? The nurse hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. The doctors said you lost most of the skin on your palms, damaged tendons in multiple fingers. Rope burns went down to muscle. They are not sure you will regain full use. The men I brought down, are they alive? The nurse smiled. All 75, because of you. Over 2 weeks, men came to visit. Private Chen rolled his wheelchair to Doss's bedside. Both legs were gone below the knees. He would never walk again. But he was alive. I heard you screaming that night when I was lying in that crater bleeding. I thought you were dying, but you were calling for the next wounded man. You were not going to stop. Chen pulled out a photograph. A young woman holding a baby girl. This is my wife and daughter. They exist because you would not quit. He placed the photograph on Doss's bedside table. Private Grogan came days later. He walked slowly, hand pressed to his chest where the bullet had gone through his lung. He sat and did not speak for a full minute. I died on that ridge, felt the bullet go through my lung, said goodbye to my mother in my head. Then you showed up and would not let me die. He pulled his dog tags from around his neck, placed them beside Chen's photograph. My life belongs to you now. Everything I do from this day forward, I do because you gave me the chance. On May 21st, Company B received orders to return to Hacksaw Ridge. Doss was still recovering. His hands were destroyed, pink scar tissue, deep grooves where rope cut to bone, fingers that would not straighten. Captain Glover visited. "We are going back to the ridge today." "I want to go with you, sir." "Doss, you can barely hold a spoon." "I need to see it again." In daylight. At 1400 hours, Doss climbed the cargo nets for the second time. The climb was agony. His hands could barely grip, but he climbed. Same nets, same cliff. This time in daylight. This time he could see the bloodstains on the rope. Dark brown, dried. At the top, Doss walked to the edge where he had spent 12 hours lowering men into darkness. The rope was still there, tied to the same rock, stained with blood. Grogan walked up beside him. "You stood here for 12 hours. Right here. I never understood how until now. I can barely stand here 10 seconds without wanting to run." Doss untied the rope, coiled it slowly with his ruined hands, put it in his pack. "I will keep this, so when nightmares come, I can remember it was real, that we survived." October 12, 1945. The White House. President Harry Truman placed the Medal of Honor around Doss's neck. The medal was heavy, cold. It felt wrong. "Private Doss, you have shown this nation that a man can serve without killing. You saved 75 lives. You are a credit to your country." Truman extended his hand. When they shook, pain shot up Doss's arm. His damaged fingers could barely close. But he did not pull away, just smiled and hoped nobody noticed his hand shaking. That night, Dorothy took his hands in hers, traced the scars, the deep grooves, the fingers that would not straighten. Tears ran down her face. Do they hurt? Every day, when it rains, when I use them, they just hurt. Will they get better? No. This is as good as they get. Dorothy lifted his scarred hands to her face, kissed the destroyed palms. These hands saved 75 lives. They are the most beautiful hands I have ever seen. Doss pulled her close and cried for the men he could not save, for the ones who died in his arms, for what the war had taken from him. The nightmares never stopped. Every night for 61 years, Desmond Doss dreamed of the rope breaking, of men falling. He would wake at Otis 300 hours covered in sweat, would lie awake until dawn because sleep meant returning to the ridge. He never held his son properly. When Thomas was born in 1946, Doss tried to cradle him, but his hands could not grip. Dorothy had to take Thomas from his arms. When Thomas took his first steps and stumbled, Doss reached out to catch him, but his hands did not close fast enough. Thomas hit the floor and cried. Doss stared at his useless hands and felt like a failure. Every handshake for 61 years was agony, but he never pulled away, never complained, just smiled and said it was his honor to serve. In 2006, Desmond Doss died at age 87. The funeral was held at Chattanooga National Cemetery. 75 families sent representatives. They placed 75 white roses on his coffin, one for each life saved. Private Chen, now 83, placed his rose from his wheelchair. "Thank you for my life. Thank you for my daughter. Thank you for everything." Private Grogan, 85 and barely able to walk, placed his rose. 61 years ago, I told you I would spit on your grave if you got me killed. Instead, I am here to thank you for 61 years I should not have had. All because you would not quit. The rope from Hacksaw Ridge was buried with Doss. He had kept it for 61 years, still stained with blood, still frayed from that impossible night. It lay across his chest in the coffin. 75 lives, 12 hours, one rope, one man who refused to leave his brothers behind. That was Desmond Doss, and his story proves that courage does not always come from a gun. Sometimes it comes from bandages and rope, and the absolute refusal to quit when quitting would be easier. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save one more life, even when it destroys your hands. Desmond Doss proved that on Hacksaw Ridge, and 75 families will remember it forever.